everyone, this is RetroFuture, and I have another Battleborn character review for you, and in this episode we are going to be looking at Melka. Yes, I'm finally getting around to some of the Eldrid faction characters, and we are going to be looking at Melka, the Eldrid Assassin. We are going to be looking at her skill setup, her helix loadout, her in-game background lore, and also some tips and tricks that I have found to use her to be a pain in the ass for our opponents. So let's get right into her basic skill setup. Her first skill is called Claw Lunge. Melka will, lunge herself forward and she'll attack the opponents and she'll deal, a small amount of damage, relatively fair. However, it does bonus damage to enemies that are covered in venom, and we'll get to that in a second. Her second skill is Spike. Melka will charge up with her left hand with her special claw and then thrust it down at the ground, and it'll launch and propel Melka straight upwards into the air. We can further augment this, and I'll show you some cool augments in the helix loadout later on in the video. But for right now, that's all Spike does, is it just throws a blast of energy down beneath Melka and it propels her upwards. Her ultimate is called Blade Launcher. She will shoot 3 blades that are covered in venom at her opponents. Each one starts off dealing only 167 damage. Pretty good, pretty useful. The rate of fire is pretty good, and it's automatic. Once you fire one, the other 2 will fire immediately afterwards, so you don't have to worry about pulling the trigger 3 times. You just pull it once, and Melka will go bam, bam, bam. Pretty good damage, and once again, it covers them in venom. Now, speaking of venom, that is actually Melka's special ability. That is what it makes her so infamous and such a pain in the ass on the battlefield, is that she is capable of inflicting opponents with venom, and when they are covered in venom, they will suffer continuous damage, small damage mind you, but continuous damage over an 8-second period. And there's more than one way that Melka can inflict venom, not just with her skills, but also with her gun. The machine pistol that she wields, she fires from the hip, and it has a standard 20-round magazine, but when she reloads it, she actually ejects a venom canister that explodes on contact, and anything that it touches or lands directly next to will be covered in venom and will take continuous damage over 8 seconds. Pretty good, pretty useful, and that's basically her basic skill setup right there. It's all about the venom. If I have not made that clear yet, Melka's forte on the battlefield is inflicting venom status and just being a constant harassment to our opponents. And now we're going to move on to her lore and backstory. So the first thing you should know about Melka is her origin. She is actually from a race known as the Aelfrin. However, she herself is not a full-blooded Aelfrin. She is actually half Aelfrin. Her father was human, her mother was an Aelfrin refugee from Eshteni, and they raised Melka for 5 years aboard a research vessel, as her parents were both scientists. And for 5 years, she lived aboard this research vessel, the Ethereum, and, hung out with her parents and the other researchers and engineers and scientists. And she became very fond of the crew, and the crew loved her back, and they all got along really good. So what happened was, however, her home planet, Farhallam, was actually attacked by the Varelsi, along with the star in that respective system, and the planet and the star were both darkened at the same time. And as a result, Melka's parents, who were on an expedition to try and save as many people as possible from the planet, they were taken and lost along with the planet as well. And that has filled Melka with nothing more than just a thirst for vengeance. She wants nothing more than to exact revenge on the Varelsi, and that fuels her fighting spirit to the point where other people note that when she is fighting Varelsi on the battlefield, she is a monster. She is actually a terror to be reckoned with, and she is not to be taken lightly or written off. And she has completely decimated multiple conservators, in battle, and she is actually very formidable when fighting against Varelsi. The next thing I'd like to talk about is actually the gauntlet on her left arm, which is codenamed the Fist. It was originally just a gauntlet that you could put on and take off. It was called the Eldrid Massmorph Bio Gauntlet, codenamed the Fist. However, as Melka wore it over time, refusing to take it off, even going so far as to sleep with it, she eventually found to the point where it was attached to her. It had fused with her and become linked to her mentally. So that the gauntlet that she wears is now a part of her. It's every much a part of her as any other part of her body. So, and it's actually able to do amazing things. It's able to shapeshift on command, and you'll see that in combat where she can form a blade, she can use it to throw down energy blasts and stuff, and so on and so forth. So the fist is actually originally just a weapon that should have been able to be removed, but because Melka wore it for so long, never taking it off, it eventually fused with her and is now a part of her. The last thing I'd like to talk about is the relationships and affiliations she has. Even though she is Eldrid, she is actually on very good, respectable terms with Galt. She respects Galt greatly and looks up to him as a little bit of a role model in terms of combat and leadership. However, she hates D'Andy. She has a lot of distrust. If you played the prologue mission, then you would know that Melka just does not trust D'Andy. She does not trust any of the Generate faction, even the Separatists that D'Andy and Rather and Calderis are a part of. She does not trust any. She does not trust any Generate. She doesn't want anything to do with them. But by the end of the storyline mission, when they beat Rendane, you notice that she and D'Andy eventually develop a mutual respect for one another. They don't become best friends, but they trust and respect one another to a certain degree. So she eventually overcomes that in and of itself. And that's really all I've got to go over with Melka's lore and backstory. And now we're going to move on to her Helix loadout that I have found to maximize her effectiveness on the battlefield. Okay, so for my Helix loadout for Melka, right off the bat, level 1, I go with Hobbling Spike. I prefer to slow my opponents with Spike since that is the ability I use the most with Melka, and I'm not too proficient with Claw Lunge, and I like to save Claw Lunge for a retreat option. So I prefer to use Hobbling Spike just to slow my opponents, and it adds an area of effect that we can also take advantage of in level 2. And level 2, right here, I prefer to use Parting Gift. Now, Spike Vault isn't actually all that bad. Neither is Liftoff. But I prefer Parting Gift just because this way I can leave behind some Venom and I can inflict Venom status on my opponents this way as well. Don't get me wrong, it's not powerful damage, it's only 20 damage over a 5-second period. But it's enough to generate, it's enough to start taking away some health, especially since I've slowed them. And I've also inflicted Venom status on it. So that's why I prefer Parting Gift for level 2. Level 3, I go with Frag Canister. I prefer to use her custom machine pistols so that it fragments into smaller projectiles, which make it so that it kind of spreads out and it can deal multiple, and it can inflict Venom status on multiple enemies. So if you see a small wave of little minion robots running around, you can just fire a frag canister, your Venom canister over in that area. It'll fragment into smaller canisters, and it'll inflict Venom status on more than one target easily. Now, right off the bat right here, I prefer Blade Ejection, only just because I like the fact of dealing a slight little bit of extra damage. Action Reload isn't too bad, but Melka's reload, if her machine pistol reload is fast enough, it's not very slow. If it was painstakingly slow, then action reload might be useful, but her reload speed is already good enough as is, so I don't need to worry about that. And Tactical Withdrawal, I'm not all that good with Claw Lunge, so I prefer the extra damage. Now, right here at level 5, oh, excuse me if you can't tell from my voice, I'm a little sick. I'm trying to recover from a cold. Right off the bat, right here for level 5, I have to go with Venom Contagion, or Contagion, however you pronounce that. If I kill an enemy that is affected by Venom, they explode and spread the Venom to their nearby allies as well, meaning that more people are afflicted with Venom. Pretty good, pretty useful. If you don't have that, you can go with either Eldrid Rhythm or Adrenaline Rush. Either one is fine. You know, it doesn't really bother. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. I would prefer Eldrid Rhythm just for the maximum health stack, which is pretty good. You know, it sticks with you so long as you don't die. Now for level 6, I prefer Spike Burst. Once again, we're going to be augmenting Spike to make it even better. So we increase the area of effect for Spike, which also increases Parting Gift's area of effect, making it so that we afflict more enemies with slow and venom status. So very useful there. Claw Lunge's cooldown is only reduced on enemy kill, and I don't get too many kills with Claw Lunge, not at least in PvP. Now, next up I go with Power Spike. Once again, we are going to augment Spike yet again. This time, we are going to make it so that the venom she uses is also more damaging. You know, it's just deadlier. So once again, like I said, we use Spike, and we just keep augmenting it and making it better and better. Next up, for this one, I prefer refined canisters or potent toxins. It's, you know, it can vary, you know, it depends on what you want. But I like refined canisters just because Melka's bullets also apply venom. If it were only the 10 clip mag size and that was it, I wouldn't choose it. But the fact that all the bullets in her machine pistol now inflict venom onto at our opponents. Sorry, I'm getting a little tongue tied here. But because the Melka's bullets also apply venom, that is also very useful. It means we can keep harassing our opponents and keep preventing them from regenerating health and their shield kicking in. Now, next up, I prefer Finishing Blow, just because I'd like to do a little bit more claw damage, you know, just a little bit more. It's not all that much, but you know what? Hey, it's better than nothing. And it increases, you know, Claw Lunge for Feral Strike, it only increases it for a short time. And I don't use her melee attack all that much. So, you know, I just prefer Finishing Blow. Now, last but not least, I definitely like Blade Storm. Blade Storm, where all the targets bounce off the environment, meaning they'll like bounce off the ground and they'll kind of track and follow enemies if they're already envenomated. And Pool Shot is also not that bad. If you have the high ground, you can take advantage of that. That way, if you just miss your opponent, odds are, because of the high ground you have, you're able to hit right behind them, and it makes it so that you can leave your Parting Gift that you left on the ground will actually afflict them almost immediately. So it's fairly useful there. And that's my Helix loadout for Melka. I've found to have a lot of fun and great success with it. And now we're going to head back to the gameplay. Next up, before we get to the battle tips and tricks, I just want to go over some basic item equipment loadouts. I've never really found Melka to be completely dependent or reliant on anything. She's actually quite flexible. However, I do like the ability to give her shoes to increase her movement speed and give her energy drinks to increase her sprinting speed. It helps her beat a hasty retreat as well as advance, circle around enemies, and so on and so forth. So if you find yourself in bad positions, you know, increased movement speed and increased sprint speed is good for either applying pressure or for getting away. And for the third item, it can be whatever. You can go with reload speed if you really want to. You can go with attack damage. You can go with just about anything. A vest to increase her maximum health. The third option is totally up to you. Melka is not dependent on any of these items. I've found that she is very formidable on her own, even if you don't want to use items. So it's really up to you, the player, what you want to equip Melka with and spend your shards on. Now, when it comes to battle tactics for Melka, Melka is actually surprisingly fun and entertaining. However, it's her mobility, her ability to constantly stay moving, to constantly attack my opponents, never standing still. That is definitely one of the most important things you can do with Melka, is not stand still. Don't be stationary, don't be a statue, stay on the move, flank your opponents in the middle of the battlefield. You're going to be up kind of near the front lines with all the other melee characters. I found that Melka is actually pretty good at surviving up close and personal. As you notice, I don't hesitate to get right up in their faces, regardless of their range. You know, if they're melee characters, obviously I'll try and keep a little bit of distance, but other close character or mid-range fighters, I don't have any problems getting up close and personal with Melka. I've found that to be very effective with her. Now, Melka's initial strategy, I would have to say, is what I like to term R&R. And that is not the usual R&R that you might be thinking of, but I call it recognize and react. Melka requires that you recognize situations immediately and react to them accordingly. If situations immediately turn bad, do what I did right there. Find a way to beat a hasty retreat. Recognize how quickly the situation turned bad, how quickly things got out of your favor, and then react. So Melka requires good reflexes and good mental understanding of the battlefield, being able to recognize the situation, position yourself accordingly, constantly understand the flow of the battle. Once you're able to do that, you're actually able to play Melka pretty efficiently. Now, it took me a little bit of a while to learn that with Melka. You know, I learned a lot of things the hard way when I play new characters. Melka was not an easy pickup for me, but once I recognized that I need to be able to have good reflexes on the battlefield, I need to be able to quickly recognize situations and react accordingly. Once I came to that realization, I had a lot of fun with Melka. Melka is a boatload of fun. She is entertaining as all hell. She's very great to play with, and she's not really all that hard to gain a good understanding of. Now, you notice I love to use the spike ability. I love to hit the ground with it, and then while I'm in midair, if I need to beat hasty retreat, you've seen me use the claw lunge in midair. That is one of the best things about Melka. Her claw lunge is an offensive ability, but if you use it while in midair and point away from your opponents, it will propel Melka to safety great distances. And even if you want to chase enemies like I did right here with Caldarius, I caught right up to him just by doing that. So it's very, very useful to take advantage of Melka's mobility, which is another reason why I chose to use shoes and energy drinks to increase her movement speed and sprint speed. So you can do that. She doesn't require it, but as you can see right here, Melka just is capable of using the claw lunge to gain great distance and pretty much evade enemy melee characters. She is excellent at that. Melka is a lot of fun. I cannot deny it. Use that spike ability to your advantage whenever you can. Use it to trap your opponents, put it in choke points, you know, dance around your opponents, slow them down, afflict them with venom. Melka is there to constantly harass your opponents. She is constantly on the front lines, harassing my opponents, being a complete pain in the ass and a thorn in their side. She is constantly annoying the hell out of my opponents, and I would not have it any other way. She is annoying for me to fight against. Every time I see an enemy Melka, I immediately know that just because I get around a corner doesn't mean I'm safe, because several times I have died because Melka's venom will keep poisoning me and keep chipping away at my health, and when I escape with just a little bit of health, the venom will eventually finish me off, and that can be a little irritating, but that is what Melka excels at. You need to understand that Melka's venom and her mobility enable her to be a constant pain in everyone's asses. Dance circles around your opponents, be a pain in their ass, and just constantly harass them to no end. Recognize when situations are about to turn bad, and then beat a hasty retreat, and you should be good from there on out. Like I said, it takes good patience and good understanding of the battlefield to play good with Melka, but once you get that, Melka is so much fun, and your opponents will have nothing, they will pitch shit fits trying to deal with you from time to time. It can be very annoying for your opponents to deal with Melka constantly. And that's really all I have to talk about Melka. She's a fun Eldrid attacker, definitely good on the front lines, and definitely a good pain in the ass and a problem for your opponents to deal with. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video and gameplay. If you did, please don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, comment down below, follow me on Twitch and Twitter, and I'll see you guys all later. This is RadTech Shoes signing off.